The storm outside New York's skyline mirrored the storm inside Alexander Crowne's heart. The billionaire, once known for his ruthless brilliance and untouchable empire, had become a shadow of himself since the death of his wife, Isabella. 1 year ago, the world knew it as a tragic accident, a storm, a capsized yacht, a body never recovered. Alexander knew it as the night his heart had been ripped away. He lived with ghosts. Every gala, every board meeting, every late-night drink in his towering penthouse reminded him of the woman who once completed him. It was after a charity gala, when his bodyguards prepared to usher him into his black Rolls-Royce, that it happened. A young black girl, barely in her 20s, slipped past the security barrier. Her eyes were wide, frantic, yet her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Mr. Crowne," she said, trembling but determined, "your wife is still alive." Alexander froze. Bodyguards moved forward, but he lifted his hand, stopping them. His gaze locked onto hers, sharp and searching. "What did you just say?" he demanded. The girl looked around nervously, then pressed a folded piece of paper into his palm. "They lied to you. She's alive. They're keeping her." Before he could press further, she slipped into the crowd, swallowed by the night. Alexander opened the note in the back seat of his car. His chest tightened. Inside was a photograph, grainy, but clear enough. Isabella, alive. Her emerald eyes, dimmer, her face thinner but unmistakable. She sat in what looked like a dirty warehouse, a date scribbled on the back. 3 months ago, the scotch he'd sipped earlier churned in his stomach. For a year, he had mourned. For a year he had buried himself in grief, and now this? Could it be true? Could Isabella still be out there? That night, Alexander sat alone in his study, staring at the photo until dawn. His grief was replaced by something colder, sharper. If she was alive, he would find her. If someone had taken her, he would burn their world to the ground. He picked up his phone and dialed a single number. When the line clicked, a gravelly voice answered, "It's been a long time." Alexander's reply was steady, dangerous. "Marcus, I need you. We're going to war." Asterisk Marcus Hale, a former intelligence officer turned private security consultant, arrived at dawn. Broad-shouldered, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much, he was the only man Alexander trusted. Alexander laid the photograph on the oak desk. Marcus studied it carefully, then exhaled. "This isn't a fake. Timestamp is recent. Someone wanted you to see this." "Then we find her," Alexander said, his voice iron. Marcus's investigation began immediately, within 48 hours. He uncovered anomalies surrounding Isabella's so-called death. The Coast Guard's records had been altered. CCTV footage from the marina was missing. Anonymous bank transfers, millions, had been wired offshore days before the storm. This wasn't an accident, Marcus concluded. It was a setup. But who would dare stage the disappearance of the billionaire's wife? That night, the girl returned. Marcus had been tailing her, making sure she wasn't a plant. She finally agreed to meet Alexander in a dimly lit motel, room shaking as though the walls themselves had ears. "My name is Naomi," she whispered. "I worked for them, for the people who took her." "Who are they?" Alexander asked sharply. Her eyes flicked toward the window. "Syndicate. They deal in power, human trafficking, politics, secrets no government will admit. Isabella, she's valuable. That's why she's still alive." Alexander's fists clenched. "Where is she?" Naomi shook her head. "They move her constantly. But 3 months ago, she was being held at a facility off the African coast. I escaped before I could see where they took her next. But you must hurry. They're planning to move her again. If that happens, you'll never find her." The room went still. For a moment, all Alexander could hear was the roar of his own pulse. He looked at Marcus. "Get the jet ready. We leave tonight." Naomi's eyes widened. "You don't understand. They're not afraid of you. They own people in governments, militaries, even corporations. If you go after them," Alexander cut her off, his voice low but unyielding. "They made one mistake, Naomi. They took my wife. When a man like me loses everything, he becomes unstoppable." The private jet soared through the night, slicing across the Atlantic. Inside, Alexander sat with Naomi and Marcus, reviewing maps, satellite imagery, and intercepted communications Marcus had hacked into. The syndicate's base of operations was a heavily guarded island off the coast of Sierra Leone. Officially, it was registered as a shipping hub. Unofficially, it was a fortress. Naomi's hands trembled as she pointed to a cluster of warehouses. She was here. I cleaned those rooms. They kept her in a cell on the lower floor. I swear it.
Marcus.
Studied the maps. It won't be easy. They've got mercenaries, former special forces. You're walking into a war zone. Alexander leaned forward, his eyes burning with determination. Then we give them a war. By the time they landed, Marcus had assembled a covert team of operatives-men, loyal only to him and Alexander. They moved under the cover of night. Boats cutting silently through black waters. From the shore, the island loomed, a fortress of steel fences. Floodlights and armed patrols. Alexander's heart pounded. Every step brought him closer to Isabella, or to a trap. The infiltration began at midnight. Silenced weapons dropped guards one by one. Naomi guided them through service tunnels, her memory sharp despite her fear. Then they reached at the basement prison. The air was damp, reeking of rust and mold. Behind a row of iron bars, Alexander saw a figure. Thin, fragile, shackled to the wall. His chest tightened. Isabella. But when the woman raised her head, his hope crumbled. It wasn't her, the woman whispered. They knew you'd come. It's a trap. Before Alexander could react, alarms blared. Floodlights snapped on. Dozens of armed men stormed the corridor. Naomi screamed, "Run!" And suddenly, Alexander realized the truth. The photograph had been bait. Someone wanted him here, but who and why? Gunfire erupted, echoing through the underground halls. Marcus and his men returned fire, the air filling with smoke and chaos. Alexander grabbed Naomi, dragging her behind cover. "This was a setup," Marcus roared. "They knew we'd come." The attackers were relentless, highly trained. Whoever commanded them knew Alexander's every move. Someone close had betrayed him. They fought their way to the docks, bullets sparking against steel. Half the team was lost, but Marcus managed to secure a boat. As they sped away, Alexander's fury burned hotter than the flames consuming the island. Back on the jet, Naomi wept. "I swear, I didn't know. I thought she was there." Alexander studied her closely. Fear, desperation, but no lies. She wasn't the traitor. Marcus slammed a file onto the table. I dug deeper. Someone funded the operation that night. Storm, the fake Coast Guard reports. Everything. It wasn't the syndicate alone. He turned the file toward Alexander. The name written there made Alexander's blood run cold. It was Richard Vance's own business partner. It's a man who had built Crowne Industries alongside him. It's the man he had trusted like a brother. Why? Alexander muttered. Marcus's jaw tightened. Money, power. Isabella stood in the way of something. Maybe she knew too much. Maybe Vance needed her gone. But if he's working with the syndicate, then Isabella's fate is tied to his empire. Alexander's hands trembled. Not from fear, but from rage. His grief had been twisted into manipulation. His wife stolen not by strangers, but by the man who had dined at his table. The billionaire's voice was ice. Then, Vance has declared war on me. Asterisk, the next weeks were a blur of strategy, surveillance, and secrets dragged into the light. Marcus's network uncovered hidden accounts, offshore dealings, and encrypted communications linking Richard Vance directly to the syndicate, and then came the breakthrough and intercepted transmission, Isabella's name, a location. This time, it wasn't bait. Vance himself was moving her, planning to eliminate her once and for all before Alexander discovered the truth. The final showdown unfolded in the mountains of Switzerland, where Vance maintained a secluded estate. Snow fell silently as Alexander and his team descended like shadows. Inside, Isabella was locked in a glass room, pale but alive. When her eyes met Alexander's through the reinforced door, tears spilled down her cheeks. Alex, she whispered, her voice hoarse. For the first time in a year, his heart truly beat again. But Vance was waiting. Surrounded by armed guards, he sneered. You should have let her go, Alex. She was a weakness. Weakness has no place in our world. Alexander stepped forward, unflinching. No, Richard. The only weakness was underestimating me. Firefight was brutal, echoing through the halls. Alexander fought with a fury born of love and vengeance. Marcus cut down guards with surgical precision. Naomi, despite her fear, saved Alexander's life by pulling the trigger when a mercenary nearly struck him down. At last, Vance stood cornered, a gun in his hand. But Alexander didn't hesitate. One shot, one final betrayal avenged. The bullet struck true. Richard Vance fell, the empire of lies crumbling with him. Moments later, Alexander shattered the glass cell and held Isabella in his arms. She was weak, scarred by captivity, but alive. Against all odds, dash alive, snow fell outside as they walked. Into the dawn, Marcus and Naomi trailing behind. For the world, Alexander Crowne was still a billionaire. But for him, everything had changed. They had stolen his wife, his heart, his peace, and he had taken it all back. The war was over. But for those who dared cross him, the message was clear. Alexander Crowne does not lose.